Ben. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Joy, and I'm here to talk about how to publish your first NPM package. In this talk, I'm kind of assuming you have some familiarity with certain things, such as JavaScript, Node, NPM, and your terminal. How familiar? I would say like good friend, right? So like maybe you can't just walk into their house, but maybe you know where the toilet paper is, right? Like the extra toilet paper, because that's how we measure this, right? And if you don't think you're quite there yet, that's fine, you'll get there. So to start, I want to define like what an NPM package is, and also address the question of why you might want to publish one, right? So as Node developers, you all probably are pretty familiar with NPM packages. They're modules or libraries that you can download using NPM and then require into your code and use them to do really cool things like build APIs or build really cool, fun command line tools. In their docs, NPM actually has this really nifty bullet point list defining what a package is. And I love it for two reasons. One, because it refers to itself over and over and over again as you go down the list. And then two, the very first definition is so straightforward. An NPM package is a folder, what is it? It's a folder containing a program defined by having a package.json. And I like this because it makes it feel like an NPM package can be like anything, so long as it has a package.json, and I think that's really cool. Typically, it'll be a program that helps us write our code better or faster or nicer or something like that. But the key takeaway here is that an NPM package is a folder with a package.json in it. So why might you want to publish an NPM package? These are a few reasons I've listed out here. There's probably a lot more, but I think these are some good reasons to do so. You can publish an NPM package to make your code easily reusable for yourself. If you want to just reinstall some code that you've written before and use it again, or for your friends or your teammates. You can publish to NPM to share it, make it easily shareable with the rest of the world, so people you don't know, complete strangers. And finally, you can publish to NPM as a way to learn more about this tool that you so frequently use, to gain a better context and understanding of it in a new context. And to be explicit, when I'm talking about publishing to NPM, I'm talking about the command that we learned earlier with Ben, but we'll talk about more later. But also taking your code and publishing it in the NPM registry so that it's available for other people to download using NPM, install, require, and use in their projects. So we know what an NPM package is now, and we're motivated to publish one, which is awesome. So these are the steps that we're going to take to publish our NPM package. We are going to commit to an idea. We're going to write some code. We're going to give it life with a package.json file. We're going to create an NPM account, run a single command, and then give yourself a high five at the end. OK, that's it. That's the talk. I'm done. Just kidding. OK, so we'll walk through them together. And I do want to note that this is kind of like the bare minimum of what needs to be done to publish an NPM package. There's always more you can do, and I'll touch on a couple of those steps after we go through these. So this is not a talk about how to have ideas, but I think it's an important part of creating an NPM package or like anything really. And it's also one of my favorite parts of a project. So I wanted to offer like a couple of thoughts, a resource, and the story behind my idea that I published to NPM. So the reason the first step is to commit to an idea, I'm starting to think that like in general, people and myself included, the reason why we don't do things that we want to do or make things we want to make isn't because we don't have ideas, it's because we won't commit to them. So I'm here to say, like, if you think you don't have any ideas, you're probably wrong. Yeah, but if you disagree with that and think that it's hard to have ideas and want help trying to cultivate them, there's tons of resources online about how to have ideas and how to make ideas for side projects and all these things. One in particular that I like is Buffer has like a series of articles about like the science behind how we have ideas and creativity. And they go a little bit into like the science about the creative process in our brains. And then they also offer insight and advice for cultivating more ideas, like have more bad ideas to have more good ones. Okay, so my idea, what I published to NPM as a package, started with what many new web developers start with, the browser's console. So I do realize this is a Node meetup, but I'm going to be talking about front end and NPM, so cool. I taught web development for a while, and one of the first things that we taught students, and it's one of the first things I think new developers learn in general, is how to use console.log, right? We teach them to use it to debug their code and to see like what's happening as your code unfolds, to see like what variables or what values variables have and things like that. I'd also use console log during demos a lot as I was like up in front of people and typing out code. And I noticed what would happen is that my students, as well as myself, we would end up with so much text in our console that it was really tedious to read. So of course, this shouldn't be applicable to like your production code, right? You don't really want to deploy a lot of console logs. But when you're working and debugging, they're very, very helpful. So when I learned that you can actually style your console logs with CSS, I had an idea, and my thought was that it would be so useful to add some more visual elements to all of these console logs. So visual elements like these, which is a method I wrote called console.block, which adds like headers to the logs, I guess. And a method like rainbow, which does this. So one of them is much more practical than the other, but I think you get the point. This library that I wrote, which is literally just these three methods, is called console.lol. And it's also, that name is inspired by live demoing code, again, where I would frequently mistype console.log as console.lol. So of course, it needed a method that did something. Okay, so like I said earlier, the thing to note is that this library that I wrote is primarily, or really solely, for the browser, right? CSS doesn't work in Node. So the great thing about NPM is that we can publish things to it and use those packages in our front-end code as well. So with that in mind also, that's going to affect like some of the things that I talk about in terms of like publishing a package. All right, so the next step was to write code, right? I wrote those three methods, and ultimately my goal was to make it easily accessible to students and whoever else wanted to use this library in their console logs and debugging practice. So the way I wanted to do that was by making it available via CDN. And there are a few ways you can do this, but we're talking about publishing NPM packages, so we're going to do it that way. Right now, the only thing you really need to know about the code that I wrote is that this is what the directory looks like. So there's an index.js file, which has all of my JavaScript in it, those three methods I wrote. And then a bunch of HTML pages. That was me trying to write like documentation and a landing page. And I think right now they all have like a construction GIF because that's where they're at. But for now, that's like all we need to know about writing code. OK, so we wrote the code. We have this small library that's ready to be published as an NPM package. But it's not a package yet, right? It's missing that special thing that makes an NPM package, which is a package.json. Cool. So before we talk about configuring your package.json, I have to be honest with y'all. I'm really tired of the word package. Like in preparing for this talk and doing all this work and just saying it and reading it and thinking it over and over again, it did that thing where it lost its meaning and like is just nonsensical now. So from here on out, for the rest of this talk, I will now be referring to NPM packages as NPM penguins. Cool. All right, it's also nicer to say penguin, I think. OK, so configuring our penguin.json. We talked earlier, as Node developers, we're pretty familiar with the penguin.json file, right? If you've ever worked on a Node project before, you've added dependencies to it, scripts to it, all that jazz. So I'm not going to go through like every single possibility in the penguin.json and just focus on just highlight some key things that are relevant and significant to publishing an NPM penguin. So the very first thing, the most important two things, are a name and a version. So the name needs to be unique, so you do want to check the registry for like any potential conflicts. And then the version starts at 1.0.0, not that, and it uses semantic versioning. So there's a lot of literature online about semantic versioning. NPM has a great article describing it and explaining it. But essentially, it means we change each number depending on what kind of change we did in our code. So the first one, you increase it if you made a change that would potentially break your user's code. The second one, you change it if you just added a new feature that would not necessarily break their code. And then the last one is if you fixed something in your code. So it's really important to keep it updated, one, so that people know or like can tell at a glance if they need to do something when you update your penguin. But two, NPM won't let you publish or like republish your penguin if it sees that there's another penguin with the same name and version. So it won't let you do that. OK, so another aspect of our penguin.json is the files array. And what this list is the files that you want actually included when you publish your penguin. By default, everything in your directory will be published. So if we think back to my structure, my console.lol library, we had all those HTML files and everything that we don't need to publish at all. So by making this whitelist, essentially, of what files to include, we don't get all of those HTML files pushed to NPM. Another option of doing that is instead of using the files array here, we can write an npm ignore file. Very similar, pretty much exactly the same to git ignore file, but it essentially tells NPM to ignore certain files and not publish them. OK, so there are a couple of files, though, that will be included regardless of whether or not you include them in this files list. And those are your README file and your penguin.json. OK, and then the next one is specific to the console.lol library, which is a browser field. So typically in your penguin.json, you might be used to seeing the main field, and that's like the entry point, right? That's the code that runs when you require this library. For penguins meant to be used in the browser, there's another option, which is the browser field. And by giving that a value, people will know that this npm penguin is meant for the browser and not for running in Node. All right, so this is what those things all look like together with an added description. And we have brought our penguin to life. It is now classified as an npm penguin because that's all we needed to make it so. So now we can do the work to share it with the rest of the world. And the first thing to do that is to create an NPM account. You can do this either in your terminal or on their website. So if you go on their website, npmjs.com, you can click sign up or register, whatever it is, and follow those instructions there. So regardless of whether or not you sign up on the website or in the terminal, you can log into both. If you want to register via the terminal, the command is going to be npm add user. It's going to prompt you for a username, password, and email address, and then it'll sign you in. And if you logged in via, or if you registered via the website, you can log in your terminal as npm login. And if for some reason you need to know who you are, or if you're logged in, you can run npm who am I, and it'll tell you that you're your awesome self, or it'll tell you that you're some other awesome person who logged into the machine. Okay, so the last step for creating your NPM account is to verify your email, because if you do not, it will not let you publish any penguins. Okay, so this is it. This is the moment we've been waiting for, how to publish our NPM penguin. And as Ben taught us earlier today, the command to run is npm publish. Yay, that's it. We did it. Okay, so to break it down a little bit more, this is very technical jargon. npm publish essentially smooshes your code into a tarball, which is basically like a compressed zip of the folder. And it sends that signed tarball up to NPM registry, making it available for everyone to download and install using npm I. When you publish it, it will be listed online at npmjs.com, and yeah, people can install it using their terminal. So this is the page for console.lol after I published it. It's up there. And a couple more pretty useful commands when you're publishing a penguin are npm pack, which shows you what files will be included, like if you were to publish it without actually publishing it, as well as npm version, and then an argument of a semver string, which is major, minor, or patch, which are those things we talked about earlier. So if you run npm version patch, for example, it will increase the version of your project, as well as make a git commit and tag that commit with that version. So that's one benefit of using the command rather than just like manually doing it. The thing it doesn't do, though, is publish again. So you do need to run npm publish after you increase the version. Cool. So after you've done that, the last step is to celebrate. You did it. Yeah. Cool. So just to recap, the basic steps to publishing an NPM penguin to NPM are to commit to an idea, write some code, configure your penguin.json, create and log into an NPM account, run npm publish, and then give yourself a high five. So there are a couple of things, or a few things I wanted to touch on as sort of like extra things you can do, and probably things you'll want to do as you build your NPM project. And they are, testing your code, configuring your code for whichever environment it's meant to run in. And then I also wanted to talk about sharing your package, your penguin, via CDN. So testing your code, there are so many resources out there, but I just wanted to highlight Kent C. Dodd's Egghead.io course about open sourcing a JavaScript library. I actually I did like an online workshop of his, which is where I learned a lot of this stuff. And this Egghead course covers everything I covered and so much more, including writing tests and testing your code. So definitely check it out. Configuring your code for its environment, right? I wrote console.lol specifically for running in the browser. So it's going to be different like configurations for that versus being run in Node. And then there's also special things you can do so that your NPM penguin can be used in either environment. So that's extra work that you could dig into. And Duality has a pretty good series of articles that dives into ways you can do that. And then finally, making your NPM penguin accessible via CDN, which was like my original goal, right? Unpackage is a content delivery network that specifically makes all NPM penguins available. So initially I thought I would have to do more work to make this happen, but it turns out that you just have to publish something to NPM, and it becomes available via their CDN at unpackage.com/penguin name at the version /file name. So if you want to use console.lol in a project, you can just include a script tag and go ahead and do that. And this applies to like all the NPM penguins out there. Yeah, so thank you all for listening. My slides are online at bit.ly/npm publish. And console.lol is open source and online at GitHub. If you are interested in contributing in any way, let me know. And I hope that you commit to bringing your ideas to life, and that when you publish one, please share your NPM penguin with me. Thanks.